So let's start over. My bad. Jay couldn't join us, unfortunately. He's having some mic trouble. RGood is able to step in last minute and join us. Anyway, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about all the new cards and denizens of Shim'Zar. We will talk a little bit about the change to Ancestral Divination, and at the end we'll be talking about the new decks that we are playing with, what we think is strong in the ladder right now, particularly in regards to the new meta. So we're going to start with Ancestral Divination. So here's the change. It is now cost 4, draw a card for each friendly minion on the battlefield. I'm going to start with turning this over to Wicked, since he probably has the most experience both with old and new Ancestral Div. Wicked, go.
Okay. Now, I'd first like to credit Jay got me into Divination. That dude has been playing with Divination longer than I have. I just happened to take it to a strange point of obsession, whereas he tried other decks. So Jay likes to build a lot of different decks, whereas I like to stick hundreds of games into one deck. So yeah, that's how I somehow adopted this strange renown for Divination. It's time to put my head in my hands. I don't think Divination is a thing anymore. I'm gonna keep testing it. Initial impressions that it's too slow. Even as you can't run it alongside Heaven's Eclipse anymore, really, because you don't want to be drawing a 4-mana draw spell off Heaven's Eclipse. And it's one of those where it's great if you're ahead on board. You want to be drawing at least 3 cards for it to be about appropriate with the mana cost. I struggle to find it fitting in a deck at the moment. I think it's best in combination with something like Jack's True Sight to have that late game, but then the thing is, are people going to be running decks that are vulnerable to Jack's True Sight at the moment? You can pick up some wins because Vitruvian really doesn't like Jack's True Sight, Vanar. But I think the Magma meta is coming. We're going to see more Scorn. Stuff will pop back in once people have done experimenting. I was trying a bit of Crom with it as well. I think that's a pretty good 5-drop for Songhai. But yeah, Divination is a lot less powerful than it was. I'm still going to play around with it. I think it's really interesting, especially with the introduction of solid 1-drops like Katara for Songhai. And the fact that it works with your Reaver's Bloodborne spell is really nice. But definitely lost a lot of power and going to take a bit of figuring out.
Well, thanks for that, Wicked. I'm certainly hoping that card can kind of find its way back into the meta and viable builds. RGood, is there anything you'd like to add about Div? Have you worked with it at all?
Not worked with it too much. I've played with it since it was released and changed a little bit. Because when I looked at it, the first thing I thought was, it's kind of like Heaven's Eclipse before it would change. It just kind of hinges on minions being on the battlefield. So I definitely didn't see a place for it in Spellhigh. I considered that, it might be beneficial proccing with Reva's Bloodborne spell, but WickedFlux, right, you need about 3 card draws to make this worth it, and to spit it on the field with 3 other minions is pretty rare, considering how back and forth these games tend to be.
Uno, how about you?
Yeah, I think this card's just terrible. Like, yeah, I think the other guys are right. Like, you need like at least 3 cards to get this to be worth it, and it's just so bad. Like, Heaven's Eclipse is not a great card, but we still play it because it's our best option. I think Heaven's Eclipse is just like way better than this, and the fact that if you don't have a minion, and I play Songhai, a lot of the turns I start with I don't have a minion, and then I have a 4-mana card that does literally nothing. I just can't see anywhere this card is ever good, and if it is good, you're like way ahead. It's like the definition of a win more card, and it doesn't even win you more on board, so I don't like it at all.
Okay.
I'd defend it in that it's like, there's a couple of cards that get unfairly labelled as win more. I'd say it's not because the way you got ahead on board was by using cheap, and perhaps like you burnt through your hand, so you used stuff like Blood Tear or like more Tuskbore. So it's not it's kind of a like stay ahead card in that aspect, and obviously you have to design your deck around it. So it's not strictly a win more card, but I do agree that you're in a good position. If you could spend 4 mana doing something else, you'd probably still be in a good position. It still suits the whole thing. The whole thing with Divination, like the old Cycle High deck, is that it could afford to spend like enough mana drawing cards because it ran like 3 Inner Focus, 3 Blood Tear, Tuskbore, all this stuff that gets it back on the board and that enables you to be very powerful with tempo swings. Mana Vortex as well, allowed you to cheat mana and all that kind of stuff. But the new Divination is pretty damn slow, and yeah, it's really slow. And in like a tempo, fast-paced, aggressive meta, to get 3 minions to stick and then spend 4 mana on drawing, like the combos you draw off the 4 mana have to be worth it rather than just playing 4 mana worth of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still in the mentality of like
No, please go ahead, Uno.
old like pre-patch Duelyst, where like minions just don't live for very long. I mean, sure they live a little bit longer now because everyone's like trying out stuff like Battle Pet Magma and like Vitruvian doesn't really deal well with minions. But in general, pre-patch like a bunch of Kara, a bunch of Cassava running around. My minions weren't living very long, and never really enough to get this. And then like if I'm behind on board, let's say they're not at 8 mana, they don't play like Tuskspore, double blood tier, and then play this. Like you actually rely on small minions to live, and it's very hard to evaluate cards that rely on minions living and thinking they're actually good, because I think as the patch goes on, and even as I just climbed closer and closer to S rank this season, I just noticed as people went back to decks with actually good removal, and then just nothing sticks anymore. So I just really hesitate on cards that rely on living.
Bitbox Dragon asked, would Ancestral be more playable at 3? What do you think, Wicked?
Yes. I mean, that's a kind of a dumb question. I'm not to be rude, but like, if it's a mana cheaper, is it better? Yes, it is. Yeah, it would be a hell of a lot cheaper.
Okay.
Would it be playable?
Would it be viable? Okay. Well, let's move on, you guys. Let's look at the first new card from Shim'Zar, and that is the Battle Pet Ace. Let's start with RGood. RGood, why don't you take it away?
Okay.
Can we just all agree to move on? Like,
Yeah.
Plain and
There's nothing
simple,
to
with
discuss
ranged
it.
battle pets being broken as they are, I don't see this ever getting played ever in any deck at all. And you should feel bad for bringing it up.
Wicked.
This just makes me sad. I mean, it's a really cute turtle, but like, it's a bad card. If ranged battle pets would stay where they were and attack stuff, or even move away from the nearest minion and attack stuff, like that would be the dream. Like maybe it would be good. Like it'd be really interesting with stuff like Crimson Coil. You could like get some value going and get all these ranged pings and things. But as it is, it sucks. Like you play Ace, you protect it, and then it walks headlong into the enemy 2/3. Like it's just...
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything?
Fucking card.
Anything to add there, Uno, or do you think we pretty much hit it?
No.
All right, let's move on.
It just makes Gauntlet Songhai worse. That's all it does.
Okay, let's look at Katara. So I've heard some kind of differing opinions about Katara in terms of viability with the different generals. So I'm kind of interested to hear what you guys think about this. Let's start with Uno. Uno, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you feel about Katara?
Okay, so I only really played Katara a bit in Kalios list that I was just kind of messing around with, and I think it's a very, very good card in the deck. And when I versed Songhai, it definitely feels really, really good, just as like a curve filler, and then it's just a massive threat. I'm not convinced on this card in Reaver, and mainly because I think that Reaver wants to be going a little bit more spell strategies, and this card doesn't really fit in. Sure, Reaver tends to run, up to 3 juxtapositions these days, but I think you just need the constant threat for it to be good by itself. And sure, like a 1 mana 1/3 is not bad, but it doesn't really do much for the card slot. So I think it's really good in Kalios, but I don't really think it's good enough in a Reaver deck, unless you're running some wind minion synergy. But I think Reaver is probably better for a more spell-based approach.
Okay, RGood, how do you feel about it?
I love this card. It's stickier than Chakra Avatar. You can get some cheap card draw off it with Killing Edge. If you play any like positional cards, if you can get a backstab off this thing, 4 damage for a 1 mana creature is amazing. I run this in every Rev deck I have. That's pretty much all I have to say on that.
Okay, Wicked.
Okay, I've got a balance between the two. I'm currently testing it in Reaver. I've tested it in Kalios as well. It's a good backstab minion, which is nice. Like I don't like Gorehorn's mediocre, Kaido's all right. It's like the backstab 3 is really powerful in a 1-drop. As UnoPro said, like especially early in the game, you don't actually want to be dropping it as a 1-drop. Like it's not really something that fights for board particularly well as a 1/3. Like even with like, and if it's forcing you to run a bunch of low cost positional spells, you're kind of hurting the consistency of your deck. I do like it in Reaver at the moment. I'm trying 2 in a mid-range type, well, like a minion heavy spell high deck, which we'll look at later. I really like that it gives you another target for the inner focus killing edge combo, of which I think like in Reaver you should be running 3 inner focus, 3 killing edge in almost every deck. Like that's one of the most powerful things Songhai does at the moment, and Katara offering that alternate cheap target for inner focus killing edge, I think is really powerful. I treat her like a combo piece, like I'll often be replacing her earlier and then looking to keep Katara for kind of after a Heaven's Eclipse or something like that and get some serious burst out. Like 8 damage is insane, and draw a card really can help with the consistency of your draw a little. So like, I still need to test it more. I think sometimes it feels really weak and you're just replacing it early, but as a combo piece or something that you hold on to, or something that you just place to threaten, or even like sometimes you just use it as a volley block if you've got plenty of draw in your hand. I think it's pretty solid. I need to test it more with Kalios, but I just haven't been playing Kalios because I prefer Reaver at the moment.
I think that concept of holding on to that 1 mana minion is something that you would play later on in the game is really interesting and kind of seems to go against the grain of typically I think how we build decks. So yeah, that'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, I've been getting like inner focus, double edge on it, or like
Sure.
inner focus, edge, and it's a really big burst. Like it's pretty good after Heaven's Eclipse, but it is one of those things you are looking to hold and you have to sculpt your hand accordingly.
Okay, so let's move on to Shadow Waltz. So Shadow Waltz is a 1 cost, lower the cost of all minions with backstab in your action bar by 1 and give them +1/+1. So I mean, I've done a little bit of I'll start with this one, I guess. I've done a little bit of preliminary testing with Shadow Waltz in the context of like a face aggro backstab deck, and I found that if you can draw into Shadow Waltz with Kaido or Katara, like turn 1, turn 2, you can get some pretty strong value plays really early on. The issue that I'm running into it is twofold. One, if you build your deck around Shadow Waltz by taking like the full boat of backstab minions, if you don't get that draw that you need early on, like turn 1, turn 2, you just kind of have like these mediocre early turns in the game. So your turn 1, turn 2 are kind of not great, which is really bad in the meta right now considering how strong like the mid-range late game is for like Vitruvian. The other problem is if you are actually able to make those plays and they get answered efficiently, you're down on card advantage. You just kind of pretty much lose just because of that. So that's my take on it. Let's start with RGood this time. RGood, how are you feeling about Shadow?
My biggest concern on Shadow is if you throw that value out on the board and you get a bunch of backstab minions in there, and you get the value out of the card and it gets countered, you basically dumped your hands and now have no response. You need some kind of draw to make up for it, and Ancestral Div isn't there to back you up anymore. So I'm kind of dubious as how effective this card really is.
Wicked?
You caught me mid-sip. Okay, Shadow is an interesting card, but I don't believe in playing bad cards with other mediocre cards to make a good deck. I think like the fact that the Songhai backstab minions, like Katara's solid, I think arguably like for 1 mana as a backstab minion. Like Kaido is solid for 2 mana as a backstab minion. I think Bullhorn's kind of mediocre as a 3/3. Like it's only good within a focus, and like if backstab minions are only good within a focus, they're generally just bad. Like Scarlet Viper is pretty bad as well. I just don't want to play a 1 mana buff spell to go with a bunch of bad minions when I could just play good minions and not have to run a 1 mana buff spell. Like, I don't think the buff is powerful enough because backstab minions don't have impact on the board immediately, like without inner focus, so that makes you very reliant on inner focus anyway. So, and I don't think giving them +1/+1 makes them particularly likely to survive because it puts all of them up outside of Scarlet Viper to 4 health, right? And I don't think that makes much of a difference versus the current meta. It helps a bit versus Songhai, but I think it's too slow, and the backstab support isn't there for the faction to run a deck based around it.
Sure. Uno, how about you? You're falling asleep on us.
Yeah.
Send Uno your energy.
A little bit sick at the moment. But thanks for the energy chat. Yeah, I really don't like this card either, and we might hit him to that a few times today, but it's just another one of those cards that, like, depending on your hand, does literally nothing. Like, just absolutely nothing at all. And when is this card good? It's when your deck is literally just, like, full of backstab minions, and that's not a good deck at all. Sorry, guys. Like, people want backstab part of their thing. It's not going to be by jamming 30 backstab minions. And like, backstab minions don't even have synergy for each other. Like, killing edges only pay off, but synergizing with having like 1 backstab minion. Backstab minions actually have counter synergy, and then, doesn't work well with Gorehorn because then you can no longer inner focus your Gorehorn. It just doesn't seem very good to me. Like, maybe it's a good card in a bad deck, but I don't think it's ever a good card in an actually good deck.
Okay. Well, I don't think there's much else to say about that. How would you guys feel if like the +1/+1 also applied to backstab minions on the board? Do you guys think that that would make it any more viable, Uno?
I mean, it would be better.
It's like that question we had
There it
earlier.
is. Yeah, if it was
Yeah.
better,
Will
would it be better?
it be better?
I don't know if it's good or
Yeah,
not.
it will be.
Would it be playable though? I think going back to WickedFlux's point, the only thing that this card would ever be played on would be like Katara, because adding a bad card to a mediocre card does not make a good deck. And
Yeah, the stat rush initially, so it has some immediate impact on board, but it's still a conditional impact on board. Like +1/+1 buffs are really powerful in card games for trading, but not when they're in your action bar. Like,
this really reminds me of like Katara's Bloodborne spell, except it costs a card. It's only buffs certain minions, and the minions that get cheaper can still get answered pretty easily.
Okay, so confirmed worse than Kara's BBS. Let's move on. Crescent Spear. We'll start with RGood here since I believe his deck is running it.
It is. Actually, I find Crescent Spear is a fantastic control card because Ghost Lightning turns into 2 damage, which ends up, clearing off a lot of things. Twin Strike will clear off 2/2 drops really easily, and then your General becomes a 2-drop clearer. Your Phoenix Fires basically do the same thing as if you had a Blood Rage Mask on, 4 damage to the enemy General's face. Like, you just become a board clearing machine without even your hard clear, like Onyx Bear Seal, becoming necessary. I know, you might be digging for cards, but even the buffed up General is helpful if you don't end up having them. But I like it. Other people may have a difference of opinion, though.
Okay, Uno, how about you?
Well, basically since Shim'Zar came out, with my Songhai play, I've been really loving my really aggressive meld deck, and it doesn't really fit into that because the only spells that deal damage are the Phoenix Fires, and I think if you're just running Phoenix Fires, it's not really enough. Like sure you get 1 attack, but that's just Sunstorm Braces, and it's not really enough for aggression. There's nearly always a card I can add that does a similar amount of damage. So I don't really like it in that deck, but I do think it's very strong in some more traditional spell highs and stuff like Ghost Lightning, Twin Strike, and those are definitely decks I ran quite a lot before the Big Shim'Zar patch. So I definitely think this card is very strong, but I don't think it's auto-including all Songhai like some people thought it would be.
Wicked.
I think what UnoPro said. Yeah, it reminds me of the very kind of grindy Curly spell high I used to play. I think I'm going to be interested to test with this. I've not personally had enough time to put into it. Yeah, it's really interesting. I think also I've been seeing discussion about Cranky and Scientist about playing Pandemonium, and you can play that and Ghost Lightning, and you get unconditional board clear, which if you're running enough draw to support drawing that combo regularly enough, it's not too bad. I think the +1 attack's pretty nice because Songhai is kind of king of controlling the early game if they want to be, and just allowing your general to kill 2/3s and also forcing 2/3s that attacking your general to die if they want to take a charge off is fantastic. What some people said before the cards are actually released is that they think like Cyclone might be enabled through this. I still don't think that will be true, because I think Cyclone is still at the moment, especially in such a fast tempo-based meta, Cyclone is often too dead or too slow for 3 mana, even if you're supporting it with Silhouette Tracer and all that stuff. So yeah, I don't think it enables Cyclone. I think it's a really good card, not in every deck. And like UnoPro said, I'm really excited to try this within some controlling Songhai builds.
Mm-hmm. No, actually, you kind of mentioned something I wanted to address. You mentioned it plus Pandemonium plus Ghost Lightning is an unconditional board clear. And you're right, but the only time that really becomes more viable is when they have more than, 3 minions on the board, and all of them are aggressive bodies that don't even or that need more than 2 health, and even then that doesn't even include the potential face damage you can do with your general.
Yeah, I agree.
I feel like sorry, it's no problem. I feel like you're kind of stretching for making that combo work, because you've really got to let them gain an overwhelming board state before that combo even becomes worth it, and before things like Onyx Bear Seal is just not a sufficient answer.
I think that there's a point to be made about the fact that the combination of Pandemonium is a transformative effect that'll allow you to get around things that proc when damage is taken or Dying Wishes. So particularly with Vitruvian being really strong right now, with Nimbus and with Aymara Healer, if they can manage to get both of those minions down, I feel like that might actually be kind of a decent way to get around that. But it's an awfully strict, specific combo.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's a combo I build the deck around. It's not like 3 Plasma Storm control Magma or something like that. I'm just thinking you could justify a copy of Pandemonium in this deck to go with your 2 Ghost Lightning or whatever. Like, I'm not going to put 3 Pandemonium and 3 Ghost Lightning, but I think it is interesting in that aspect and what it can offer to a control Songhai.
Okay, let's move on. Let's go to Zhou, our second battle pet, and we'll start with Uno since he's struggling to stay awake over there. Uno, go.
I think this card is decent, but you need to look at more of as like a draw engine rather than just like a strong 2-drop. Most of the time, it's like not going to do much at all. Normally, just send like 4 damage into the general at best. But I think it's pretty fun. Like most Songhai spells are pretty good. I really liked it in Jay's deck, his like full combo meld deck. I haven't really tested it in normal ones just because like I don't really like running a ton of 2-drops. And Shakri and Tuskball are normally enough for me. I'm like always want to get a Shakri online, and there's normally some other things you can do. But I think this card's like completely fine. It also depends on the context of your deck. Like Battle Pets as a 2-drop are never really gonna be good if you rely on getting to 4-drops. But I think Songhai is kind of even not moving away. Like we still play 4 wins for sure, but it's a lot less reliant on 4 wins. So maybe if you start to play stronger 3-drops like Battle Pando, obviously that and Fox, then this is a bit better. But yeah, look at it more as a card draw than a strong minion for sure.
Okay, Wicked, how about you?
Yeah, I agree with basically everything you said. I think it's most interesting to me is that the fact that it's a ish body on the board that draws you a card, and the discount's nice as well. Like the thing I don't like about it is Songhai is often very aggressive in contesting and controlling the early mana tiles, and Battle Pet allows your opponent to manipulate how well you can contest that. Obviously, in my style of Songhai, where I'm running like Primus Fist and Blood Tear, like it doesn't synergize with Primus Fist. Blood Tear kind of can help it clear up a 2/3, but I think certainly for a stats, it's pretty mediocre. Like 3/3 Battle Pets are so much more powerful in that aspect, simply because they can threaten 2/3s and they are 6 damage to a general as opposed to 4. But yeah, I like the draw on a 2-drop. I don't know if it's good enough to see like solid play in any deck. I'm going to be trying it in some control-y or combo-y based decks, but any deck that's looking to either consistently curve out or really take a hold of the game aggressively early, I don't think it suits. Like the gas isn't enough. You just rather play a reliable 2-drop that you can buff and things like that.
RGood.
I agree with WickedFlux. I think this one doesn't contest the mana tiles well enough. It's hard to find a good place for this in Spell High. Even if you get this like a good spell you're looking for, it's not reliable enough. Most of the time you're going to get something that doesn't fit with it. Like I can't even count the amount of times that I've pulled 8 Gates or Artifact Defiler out of this thing in a deck that's not suited to take advantage of that. And then so it just becomes replace fodder. And that's more often than not, if you even manage to get a spell out of it, you don't see some kind of dispel on the card first. So, it doesn't fit so well in the meld deck that UnoPro is talking about, because you're not gonna get something that combos very well with spells. And even in Spell High, you need a better 2-drop for contesting mana tiles, and I don't see that in this card.
Okay, let's move on to Crimson Coil. So spell, cost 2, deal 2 damage to a minion, activate your battle pets. Let's start with Wicked.
Okay, I think this is a good card in a vacuum. I think the power to reactivate battle pets is really powerful. I think 2 damage for 2 mana is fine. It's not fantastic, but combined with the rest of the tools that Songhai has and the potential cards you could see running in that deck, if ranged battle pets works like even remotely, I think this would be a really interesting card, and I think this would be the core of a Songhai battle pet deck. But ranged battle pets just don't work consistently. I can't justify building a battle pet deck with Songhai at the moment, just because there's no strong stats there. You've got a 2/3, you've got this turtle that walks in and dies. Yeah, I think it's not a bad card. Like in a vacuum, if Songhai battle pets were good, or if battle pets were good, it would be a great card.
So it kind of has the capacity to be a better card as we get more battle pet synergy, you think?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's just extra removal in Songhai, and that ability to get repeated value out of ranged units is really powerful.
Sure. Uno, you're up.
Yeah, I mean, Wicked's point about being a good card in a vacuum is definitely very true, but in the current game of Duelyst, I think it's very, really bad. I mean, I got it off Zoe the other day, and it was a true strike, so that felt pretty good. But apart from that, I don't see myself ever playing this card. I mean, 2 damage to a minion is it's okay. Like with Crescent Spear, you can get like a do-it-yourself Phoenix Fire, but I don't know. 2 damage is not enough. If you don't have a battle pet, this card is really really bad. And like battle pets are kind of designed to die. Like if I'm relying on a battle pet to live, I need to really question my deck construction. So I don't know if I'm a big fan of this one.
RGood?
They pretty much said it all. I don't have anything to add to that.
Okay, let's
Yeah.
move on. Okay, so Mirror Meld. Cost 2,
Oh boy.
summon a copy of a friendly minion that costs 2 or less nearby. Let's start with RGood.
All right, so this card obviously has some combo potential. I don't think there's a person in chat right now who doesn't know of the incredible lethal possibilities of this between Tusk or Killing Edge, Saber Spine Seal plus Mirror Meld. I tried out the deck for a good while. The combo, it happens a lot. You can definitely get some board presence out of this card, and I think we're going to see a lot of combo decks end up running this. As for overall deck viability, I'm not the person to ask about that one. I think the other two Songhai players here would have a better idea of that.
Wicked.
Okay, I've not had time to test this. I've mainly my experience with the deck is from playing against it and watching UnoPro play it, particularly on stream. When it first was announced, I thought like there's some potential for for Tuskball combos there. I thought generally in this, although I never like to ever assume anything about deck building in this game, with 6-card hand size, it's pretty hard to make proper combo decks in Duelyst because it's so hard to sculpt your hand and keep parts of a combo piece and actually be able to do stuff on your turn. Obviously, people are having success with it. I think it's very powerful with Tuskball, and it's kind of okay with Jackery if you can present a bunch of like 3/4s on one turn or whatever. Other than that, mediocre. Outside of that, it's for a very specific deck. I think it's very powerful within that deck. I need to test it myself personally. I'm surprised it works at the moment. I think like the 6-card hand size is just so limiting. For like, well, it would be broken. Like Songhai would be broken beyond control if we went beyond 6-card hand size. But yeah, really interesting card. I think it's going to be a design issue moving forward for stuff like buffs and other minions that have early impact on the board. Yeah, I'm not sure what I feel about it generally. I see people having fun playing it. I'm gonna test it. But
Okay.
yeah.
Thanks,
Not
Uno.
sure.
I know you're excited. Go.
Yeah, I'm ready to go. I absolutely love this card. It's contesting juxtaposition for my favorite card of the game. It's just like so versatile, and it gives me so many different win conditions. It's like so many different matchups. I really really love this card. Like I basically just put it into like an aggressive Songhai, similar to pre-patch Songhai, and it just fits so well. Like I tweaked the numbers slightly to accommodate for Meld. Obviously, you want 3 Saber Spines, 3 Chakris in a deck with Meld, but I think just having it with a Chakri is really really good. Chakri has a 2-mana 2/3. You basically play 2/3s with this card. At the worst when you play on a Chakri, and that's really really good. But most of the time you're checking inside like a Mana Vortex as well, and it's just such a good card. I've won quite a few games just playing Chakri. The next turn I mirror meld it and then just go off, because dealing with 2 Chakris that are above 2 health can get really really hard. So I think it's really really good in that regard. Obviously the Tusk Ball synergy is great for closing out games. Whereas with my deck, that's more of a situational thing. It's not like Jay's deck where it's absolutely built around the combo. It's more about identifying your hand, identifying the matchup, where it's really, really good, and then you can kind of save it up against the slower decks, and then Mel can do a lot of work there. And then there's also just Heartseekers that have been buffed by Kelly Edge is really, really good. A 2-mana 5/3 with Raged. That's already going to be pretty decent position. Sure, it's random, but normally when you have it set up, it's in a pretty good spot to begin with. 2-mana 5/3 is pretty good anyway, so I think it's really good in that situation, and it happens a lot more than I thought. Like I thought this was going to be a deck card a lot of the time, but it's very, very good. And if I have Chakri, it's fine in the early game as well.
And we'll certainly touch on some of the decks that utilize it specifically. I know Jay's deck is there's much hurrah about it right now, and I know Uno's deck uses it quite strongly. But yeah, we'll talk more about the specific decks for it as we get through the cards. But anybody want anything else? RGood?
Well, just to kind of touch on Jay's deck. Jay's deck feels a little inconsistent right now, but I feel like that's specifically because of how broken the mana discounts are right now, especially since that deck runs Adjudicator, and half the time the Adjudicator just doesn't work. So I feel like once that's buffed, we could see a lot more consistency come out of that combo deck. That's about it.
Wicked, anything to add?
Yeah, I think combo decks will take a while to figure out as well. They often have to be refined intensely, especially when we've got a 40-card deck to play with. So yeah, I think it's pretty scary what the combo deck will grow into. It'll be interesting to see the meta change and adapt to it, and certainly it'll be a new matchup to learn.
Uno?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I think combo deck's far from being refined, but I think maybe more of a hybrid. Like mine's definitely like a billion times less on the combo, but maybe going for more combo elements in my deck is something that I can look forward to.
Okay, well let's move on to Key Beholder. We'll start with Uno this time.
Yeah, I mean this card's definitely not too bad. The 2 health is a little bit worrying, but it is a ranged minion, and it's basically Sandtrap for a turn. So I think it's a fine tempo play, though, like, playing say like Fox or even Battle Panda potentially definitely feels a little bit stronger. This is quite easy to deal with a lot of the time, and it depends, like if there's a lot of Kari in the meta, Maw is a very real problem for this card. Like if your 3-drop dies to just Maw by itself, that's definitely a real problem. But I think it's at the moment, like not a lot of decks just going around removing minions, especially with damage, mainly Vinar. But like something like Vitruvian or Magmar, this card can definitely be pretty good against. So I think it's a pretty solid card. I don't think it's a staple, but I think you can definitely find a home in some decks.
Wicked.
Okay, I think yeah, this card is really interesting. It kind of goes with the whole Songhai theme of being very powerful at controlling the mana tiles early, in that sense, and also that it can act like a one-turn sand trap as kind of soft removal almost for a turn. I agree that the 2 health generally doesn't matter too much, but the more is really an important point to make. I don't know. Sometimes you just play it and you don't get anything off the opening gambit, and that feels awful because, like, as Songhai, you're already ahead on board often. So in that way, it can be a bit redundant in a deck. But maybe that comes with finding the right balance in the deck of cards that play with tempo, similar to that. So maybe you cut Blood Tear or certain things where you're not running Tuskbore in this deck, or I don't know. So yeah, I think decent card. We're pretty spoiled for 3-drops at the moment. Lantern Fox is standard. I think Battle Panda's got a lot of potential. I'm sure we'll talk about it soon. And Spelljammer is becoming very consistent in Songhai at the moment because of how the meta is. The fact that Songhai builds their deck around being able to abuse Spelljammer better than any other deck in the game. So it's hard to find room for it. I think it's like a solid 6 or 7 out of 10 card. I'm going to experiment with it, but it's a really tough slot to fight for at the moment.
We're good.
Yeah, so I think Key Beholder is a strictly better Fire Splitter, but WickedFlux just kind of wrapped up my point in his conclusion there. Key Beholder, it's undoubtedly a great 3-drop, but is it better than Songhai's other 3-drops between Battle Pando, Spelljammer, what most people use, or Fox? I don't see it. I think it's a great for a starting Gimp because you just deny a mana tile from somebody with an extra minion. Presents a reasonable ranged body, but usually comes off the board pretty quickly, whereas other 3-drops from Songhai present a much larger threat.
Okay, well, let's keep on moving then. Next up is Battle Panda. We'll start with RGood on this one.
Battle Panda, I see some crazy synergy in this with Death Strike Seal between either Inner Focus or if they play a Battle Pet. Battle Panda could just be an unconditional board wipe there. I mean, well, provided some damage dealing effects aren't procced first. So Battle Panda, it has strong combo potential, but it's conditional, right? You either need an Inner Focus or you need them to play something that makes it work. And it's a 3-card 5-mana combo. You'd probably be expecting that around turn 4 or 5. So it's not inconsistent, but again, to make this really valuable, to make that combo worth it, they need to have like 3 or 4 minions on the field, and by the time you've left them in that position, you're probably in a pretty down spot already. So I think there's definitely some potential here, but I don't think that, you know, if you're playing this, you're not playing to win, you're playing to save yourself and not lose.
Interesting take. Uno.
Yeah, I think I'm not really too keen on like the Death Strike combos. A lot of cards are pretty good when you think about them if you always have inner focus, and then have to add a Death Strike seal to that. I don't know about that, but like you can't really play it in Reaver, which tends to be the more controlling of the generals as well, because it's really bad synergy with your. Oh no, it's all enemies. So what am I talking about? It's. I'm still not a massive fan of this card, but I think if you were playing like a more controlling, or at least a later game spell high, it's not as bad. But I think for aggression, it's pretty bad. I think if you're gonna play Death Strike Seal, like Death Strike still has to be good in isolation, and not just when you inner focus this. I mean, if there's not a lot of the spell running around, maybe there's merit to just playing this and Death Strike Seal, because you know sometimes it will just live and you clean up the board. But I think if you're running it for inner focus shenanigans, I'm not the biggest fan of this card, but I think it's very solid. It deals with boards pretty well, and very similar to Land Fox, but you know, with Spelljammer, sometimes that slot can get really clogged as well. Yeah, but I think it's a pretty solid card.
Just as a quick aside, you also have Hearthseekers as Death Strike Seal targets as well, so it's not like this is your only hopes for a Death Strike Seal combo.
Yeah, I mean, every time I've played, like I've tried a deck list that had Death Strike Seal in it in Reaver, I was just cut it for like Killing Edge, because I really don't think Death Strike Seal is very good. I don't attack with my Heartseekers that often in Reaver. People are normally pretty prepared for them, and the times I do attack, I have to inner focus, and I'd rather be Killing Edge than Death Strike Sealing most of the time, and it really depends on the meta, but I think typically in most metas, Killing Edge will be a better enabler for a lot of these minions, and we really need to see some like a Nimbus meta, Ironcliff meta before I really want Death Strike Seal in a focus synergy over something like Killing Edge.
Okay.
Wicked.
I can't add much to what UnoPro said. I think it's a good card, very solid card. I think it's really interesting for early ball control. It's one of those things where it's like, if you could, like, you don't have to run Blood Tear if you run this card. It's just very good at contesting mana tiles early. It trades extremely efficiently. I really like that it's a 2/4 that like deals with, like, if it like a general and a 2/3 have to take this, the general's taking 4 and the 2/3's dying. Like that's really decent. But yeah, I agree. It's really hard to justify multiple buffs that are kind of more reliant on inner focus. Like Katara's only just enabled, like the power of Katara said was partly that it, along with Heartseeker, enables a cheap Killing Edge combo, and that's like how the most powerful thing Songhai does at the moment is inner focus Killing Edge, and then if you're gonna fit Death Strike Seal in that deck as well, it's like how many situational cards are you gonna put in your deck that only are dependent on either rush or stuff surviving or having one of your 3 inner focuses. And like Uno said, I just think like universally Killing Edge is going to be more situationally useful. Like if something lives, you put Killing Edge on it. It's like, it just doesn't really fit the game plan. I like it. It's great stats, great ability, really interesting. But 3-drop slot is clogged, and it's hard to justify running Killing Edge and Death Strike Seal.
Okay, I don't think there's really much else to add there. Let's move on to Pandemonium. We'll start with Wicked on this one.
Pandemonium. Okay, I haven't tested this card yet. I don't know what to think about this card. I think all minions is peculiar. Often with Songhai, you're getting like a few key powerful minions on board, and you're winning the game through that, unless you're playing a very burn-orientated list. I think I'm going to be testing it as maybe like a 4th on Expert Seal, so you run 3 of those in one Pandemonium. Try that thing. It'll be kind of, it's got interesting synergy with Twin Strike in a slower control deck, as we've mentioned before, Crescent Sphere, Ghost Lightning. I don't know what to think about this. It does give you that kind of extra turn. I think it's definitely just for spell heavy decks. Like you'd never play this in anything minion heavy. It's very peculiar to me. I think its most potential is with a controller deck with like Ghost Lightning, Twin Strike, that kind of thing, so you can actually remove the Pandos. Gives you a turn. It's a bit of a stall card, but yeah, I'm not sure what to make of it yet.
Sorry, Uno?
Yeah, I really don't like this card. It's like we got so many cards this expansion that just get situationally like do nothing or nothing positive for you at all. Like, do we really want a card that combos? It needs to combo with like double Ghost Lightning or Crescent Spear Ghost Lightning or like maybe Twin Strike. And if you're playing like situational cards like this, you want to like get a full board wipe, and Twin Strike isn't always going to do that. Like, I really don't like this card. Like, you can't even use it to get a round of provoke, because you transform your own minions at the same time. So, people have been saying they've been trying out like Crescent Sphere, Ghost Lightning, and Twin Strike, and maybe, but like I don't know how often you guys get to 7 mana these days. It doesn't happen that much. And when I do, I think I want to be doing something more powerful than turning everyone's minions into Pantos.
RGood.
Same thing. To make this card work, you need some other damage dealing spell as a prerequisite, and as we've already discussed, it's not something you can rely on. You need Crescent Spear, Ghost Lightning, or Twin Strike. Like, the only times it's really become more valuable than a straight Onyx Bear Seal is when they have like at least 3 minions or several cards with more than 2 health that a Twin Strike doesn't take care of. I mean, again, I don't see this card being very helpful until like the games start going to 9 mana or several turns into 9 mana, and that just doesn't happen right now. So it's a fun card, but not necessarily a useful one.
Okay, well, I think we can move on from there to Onyx Jaguar. Wicked, why don't you take it away on Onyx?
Okay, Onyx Jaguar, I do not like. It's this example of a card that I don't like slow cards that are situational. Like, it's a powerful effect, and sure, like it synergizes with like if you're gonna have an explosive turn with Jackery or whatever, or you've got a bunch of stuff on board. Sure, it's great, but I just think it's like you're already ahead on board and you play a 5 mana 3/3 and get some buffs. Like, obviously it's great that the minions on buffs get effectively, like the stats get rush. Just way too situational. I'd just rather like just play Dancing Blades or like a Killing Edge and the Primus Fist or something. Like, I don't get the point of this card. I think it's 5 mana 3/3, too mediocre. If you're behind on board, obviously it's absolute garbage. Yeah, I don't rate this card at all.
Una?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same problem that a lot of the cards we've been really have, is that sometimes they do literally nothing. I mean, this card you get to play a 5 mana 3/3, but it's pretty terrible. It's just like so understated. Like, the neutral just stat listing is 4/9. That's what we want for a 5-drop. So this needs a ton of stats. Sure, some of the stats can have rush, but like, unless the meta changes really drastically from what it was pre-Shim'Zar, I just don't know where we're getting all these board states where people have a bunch of minions. Like, both players have a bunch of minions. Like, it's kind of what happens in the trailers for the game and like the pictures on the website when they're advertising the game is a bunch of minions for both players. But in practice, that just like never happens. And I just don't think this is good. I think it's just situational as all hell, really.
Perhaps really just a gauntlet card. RGood?
Well, so kind of just approach this from a mathematic perspective. UnoPro, you mentioned that a 5-set, really value-wise, you expect like a 4/9 on the board, you said?
Yeah, I mean, that's the neutral comparison.
Right.
I mean, that card doesn't see play, so.
So for a neutral comparison to get 13 value worth of stats, and this is 6, you would need to move something 4 times to hit that value. And in Songhai, things don't stick on the board for very long, and I don't think you're going to get those 4 movements before this value even approaches neutral.
Yeah.
Anything else to add? Anybody?
I think if you're ahead on board, you want to do something explosive and that threatens the enemy general's life total with that advantage. You want to be pushing them down. That's a Songhai game plan. Like, you get on board with 1 scary minion or 2 scary minions. You buff them, you kill them. 2 turns later, Onyx Jaguar doesn't do that. It makes your minions slightly stickier and better at trading. but you're already ahead on board. So
All right, thanks,
I
Wicked.
normally kill people when I have 3 minions on board, so
yeah.
All right,
I don't draw cards, I don't give them +1, I just kill them.
Yeah, that
let's-
sounds much
let-
more advisable.
Let's move on to Grandmaster Zendo. I'm going to kick it over to RGood because I know that he's actually liking this card.
Oh man, I feel like I'm the only person in this chat that actually is in love with Grandmaster Zendo.
No, I kind of like it too.
Well, it breaks my heart because I think this card is amazing. It's a finisher that comes out 2 turns before you expect to see Spiral. And beyond that, it stakes on the board as a 4/4 because their general will swing at it. And you get to waste their general action. Like in decks where like Vath, his Overload becomes pointless, equipping artifacts become pointless. Against Saj, they lose their Falcius combos. Like, Grandmaster Zendo is just great for tempo because you get a fairly large body, and if they don't clear it on the board next turn, you can just buff it and get an additional 2 swings on for lethal. And I don't really understand the point of contention on that, because Grandmaster Zendo just ends up dumping value on the board that it demands an answer, and it's cheaper than Spiral. That's it sums up the point. There's probably something obvious that I'm not saying about it, but it just seems so obvious that this is a good card to me. I'm not sure. I really want to hear your guys' opinion.
Okay, UnoPro, tell him he's wrong.
Please.
I mean,
And then I will.
want this card to be good. Yeah, I really do, but it's like you say it's must answer. It's gonna have 4 health at the maximum when you play on a general. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. It's gonna have 4 health at the maximum for 6 mana. Like, I can show you an answer to that if you really want me to. It's just everything answers it. Like, this is good when you have like minions that it can hit, like maybe in like a Hammond deck, but then your Hammond already lives a turn. That feels pretty win more as well. Like, it's like a 6 mana, deal 4 damage, stun the enemy general. Is that even good in Songhai? Like,
Yes, it
there's no
really is.
is it like?
It is.
I'm just not sure. Like, I'd rather clear their minions than just do 4 damage to the general for 6 mana. Like, if I look at all the games I've played in the past time, like, I could always deal 4 damage for 6 mana. So it's not very good in a finisher kind of sense. And normally, you know, if you're playing 6 mana, they just spend a minion, so you're not dealing with the threats. And I mean, if this card somehow worked in a way that would consistently move my opponent away from me or create distance in the general, then I think it would be really good, because distance is very, really important in Songhai. But this way, it just often encourages them to like come towards me, which they would have anyway. So the displacement effect, I don't think tends to be very massive. Maybe if there's like a lot of Magmar and Saj in the meta, but I'm just not, like, every time I played this card, I was like, well, I could actually play a real threat, and then maybe that will live, and then Grandmaster Zendo will be good. But by itself, 4 damage for 6 mana, just not keen on it.
I do like the idea of just saying that Saj doesn't get to have her Bloodborne spell, but we'll see how much she gets popular. Wicked, what do you think?
Okay, so I've tested this card a little bit. I think it has some potential in that it's a consistent damage source late in the game, but mana efficiency wise, yeah, mediocre. Stats wise, mediocre. I think the most interesting aspect of actually like the Q positioning things you can do, where you can block their own minions with their general. That's pretty cute. When it gets down to the wire in late game, so when you're even, it can be pretty interesting. Obviously, when you're ahead, it's good, but anything you could do for 6 mana in Songhai is good when you're ahead. When you're behind, this card's a dancing blade that does the damage to the general, which doesn't help you. Like, if your opponent's at 20 life, you're at 15, and they've got minions on the board, and you've got a 6 mana 4/6, you're like, well, this is great. Here, take my 4/4. Got you down to 16. Shame you're going to kill me next turn. So yeah, I don't like the cards that are terrible when you're behind, and this card is absolutely terrible when you're behind.
If you play positionally minded, you can definitely use this or their own general as a body blocker. I feel like the biggest advantage is the fact that it stuns their general. It can put them in a bad position. The 4 damage is just kind of an ancillary benefit, but you can definitely use this defensively.
Or I could play Silhouette Traitor and use my 2 mana. Like,
What is the like good position that you put them in? Because like the only time people talk about Zendo putting your opponent in a bad position He's like, well, you have like a bunch of backstab minions, I don't know if anyone's really convinced that playing a bunch of backstab minions, hoping them stick is really a good idea.
I have a
And
few
just
times.
having them stick.
I have a few times at 7 mana I played Qatar plus Zenda to get them to backstab themselves. It does
7
happen.
mana is so much though. I played it obliterated once. That's how much 8 mana is. Like I played like over 100 games since Shim'Zar came out. I'd be
That's a 2-mana combo
obliterated
that does
once.
4 damage
Yeah.
and develops. Like, yeah.
7 mana is just so much. Sure, you don't 4 damage out like for 7 mana.
I think like it is an interesting card. I think even if this card is like if this card was good, I think it would be a problem as well. Something that Tundra no caps brought up before. I know he hates it when I says Tundra no caps, so I'm just gonna say it fully. He pointed out the fact that if this card was good, it'd be really annoying because it effectively takes agency out of your opponent's hand. So it's not even fun to play against. I mean, it's immensely fun to watch people kill themselves on their own turn. But apart from that, I think it'd be very frustrating if this card was ever good. But thankfully, I don't think that's a problem.
If there was ever a card designed for the sunglasses emote, I think it's Grandmaster Zendo.
Yeah, you just like end your turn, lean back, just like smack yourself into a 4/4.
I have done that quite a few times.
So, and honestly, a part of this disagreement is exactly what I'm looking for. Like, I was looking for players who had differing opinions on Zendo, which is one of the reasons why I looked to RGood. So, I'm glad I'm seeing.
You've got people who are right about it.
Right, I want arguing. Damn. All right, well, let's move on to Cone of Memes, Horns, sorry. Cost 8, transform all minions in your action bar and deck into 0-cost Gore Horns, draw 3 cards. I don't like this card.
No.
I think the thing I don't like about this card is that if it doesn't win you the game the turn you play it, you lose. I think that pretty much sums it up. Uno, how do you feel about this bad card?
I feel like it's a bad card, to be honest. It's just like not once have I ever been at 8 mana. I thought, you know, it'd be great here, a bunch of Gore Horns. Like, you need to have a lot of minions in your deck to enable that. Okay, and then you also play an 8 mana spell in that minion deck, and then you become very, very predictable. Like you lose all your good minions. You know, I'd rather play a Latin Fox or a 4-wins than Gore Horn late in the game. 8 mana is just, it's so much, man. Like, even more so than previous duels. Everyone's playing proactive stuff. There's no, like, Cassima to play really slow against. 8 mana is just way too much. It doesn't affect the board for a turn. So it does nothing apart from, like, maybe body block with a Gore Horn. I don't know if that's very good for 8 mana. And then, yeah, so you have a couple Gore Horns live. Maybe. Probably not. One of them can backstab. And then the rest do nothing. Maybe. So, it's just garbage.
RGood?
I don't think this card would even be good if we had old Ancestral Divination. Because, I mean, on 8 mana, then they just throw out an Obliterate. Now you've got a deck full of Gore. Like,
That's
this will,
kind of spells that nobody's playing.
this will
This
never...
card would be pretty good with Divination. Let's not be silly. But, like, yeah,
No matter
it's
win the
stupid.
game, is that? It's okay. It's what? Yeah,
It's
If we
fine.
could, I don't think it would like be that game.
Well, anyway, we don't
No.
even have old Divinations.
Yeah, we don't.
The point is moot. But with current, like, I can't see this card getting played at all. Like, Divination is the only thing that would even make it maybe viable because you'd be able to throw out a ton of minions. But again, like, they can just get the board wiped. You lose any potential minion value. You lose your variety. I don't see this going anywhere.
Wicked. Anything to add to
Okay.
that?
So we're just gonna like beat a dead horse for a bit. Yeah. Sure.
Yes. Exactly. That's what we're
So
here
a
for.
couple of key things is like things that I normally like doing with 8 mana in Songhai is like casting Sparrow and killing my opponent. I rate that play higher than this one. So that's my opinions. Bunny Pachano had a good point. This can be disenchanted for an epic of your choice. I agree with that one strongly as well. A serious point would be by the time you get to 8 mana, you've used 1 or 2 inner focus already because you're mulliganing and replacing for it early in the game. So it's not like these 0-cost Gore Horns are going to have any impact on the board regardless. So, yeah.
Okay.
Garbage.
So that'll do it for Songhai cards. Any favorites, specifically Uno? If you had to pick one card out of the new expansion that you were most excited about, what would it be?
Gee, who wants to guess?
Yeah, hard one, but Meld. Meld is just absolutely amazing, and technically it is another one of these Songhai cards that can potentially do nothing, but it's still always really good. So I really like it.
RGood?
I'm still a fan of Zendo, man. I'm sticking to it.
Good.
Thank you for that. Wicked?
I haven't tested Mirror Mode yet. I think it's going to be my jam, but I'm Katara. I'm a fan of Katara. I think it's really cute having like a 1-mana minion that isn't used as normal 1-mana minions are. It doesn't contest the board. It's like a cheap combo piece. Enables your combos like that. Yeah, I think it's a really interesting card.
Good. We have a couple of neutrals to discuss that you guys specifically pointed out as liking. We'll start with Kron, and I'll turn it over to Wicked because he requested that one specifically.
Okay, so I was trying this a bit in divination, so let's not talk about that. No, Kron's really, obviously Kron's a powerful card. Like, it fits in every deck if you wanted to. I think especially it's interesting Songhai because they don't want to run in the 5-drop slot. Normally you don't even want 5-drop minions, but if you did, Inquisitor Kron would be a pretty good one. Because Dancing Blades, you don't want to run in Songhai because you have Phoenix Fire. Like Zenru's kind of the other choice, but that's been it's coming back into the meta now with Vitruvian, but when the meta settles into Magmar and Kara and things like that coming back, when people realise not all the decks that got the cool new cards are the best. I think it's really powerful. It's great for Songhai that it puts 2 bodies on the board, like just targets for killing edge, things like that. Provoke is nice and rare in Songhai. Just being able to restrict people's movement in Songhai is pretty great because of how powerful they are when ahead on board. I think it's obviously a very powerful card. It will see play in a lot of decks. I think it's definitely better than Dancing Blades or something like Songhai. Yeah, there's not much to say though. I think at the moment it could almost be that the meta's too fast for a 5-drop that doesn't like have an immediate impact on board. It's still vulnerable to hard removal. Like, it's hard to justify Magi and Kron without getting too clunky. Yeah, maybe a very minion heavy deck, but I don't like very minion heavy decks. So
Uno.
powerful card though.
Yeah, I think we can cover it pretty well. Like, it takes a lot for me to play a 5-drop minion. And when we see the decklist later, like, I have 2 versions of the decklist. One is with Zenrui, and that's like the only exception where if there's a really good Zenrui meta. And then Zenrui is going to win you the game. Like, I don't know if Kron really does that. You're going to start to be playing the same game as your opponent. Like, especially with my deck, it's quite aggressive. Those are the decks I've been playing have been pretty aggressive so far lists. And one of the real strengths of Songhai is that at a turn you kind of switch gears and you set up your 2-turn, 3-turn lethal. And then Kron, you're playing their game, and a lot of decks do it better. Like, if you start trying to play value against Xerix Forever, Nimbus's are going to destroy you, and all these things, I think this card's very good, and there'll be Songhai decks that run it, like kind of like a mid-range, more value Songhai. It has been something we've seen being good in the past, but I think in the most part it may find a little bit of of struggle finding a home that really fits in with Songhai, just because doesn't really fit the typical gameplay.
Uno, your volume just went way down. Heads up. So.
Maybe
Can we hear you now?
Yeah, is that better?
A little bit. Okay. Well, let's move on. Did we talk to RGood yet? RGood, tell us how you feel about Inquisitor Kron.
No, I agree with UnoPro. Inquisitor Kron, it's a great neutral 5-drop, but I feel like it's going to have trouble finding a home in Songhai between Spell High, it doesn't really fit in the deck, and Combo High. I guess the Prisoners could end up getting a target for Mirror Meld, maybe? But I don't know, between Spell High and Combo, I can't just really see. I can't see which deck I would want this one to be in.
Yeah, if Songhai wanted to run 5-drops, this is a really good 5-drop for Songhai. Especially in Reaver, because it saturates the boards with 2 bodies. They can make great use of Frenzy, Flying Range, Provoke, Force Field, all that good stuff. It's pretty aggressively statted, good bundle of stats, but the thing is, yeah, Songhai doesn't want to play mid-range games, really. It can't out mid-range other decks. It just wants to do unfair, uninteractive things. So, very good card. Not a Songhai card.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit. There weren't really any specific new neutrals that were discussed. I
All
think
the
I
counters
lost.
froze in very flattering situations.
Oh, back.
Hey, we're back.
Sorry.
I still looked okay, and that's the only one I cared about.
All
Oh,
right.
we froze again.
Sorry about that. Trying to get Uno's volume fixed. There we go. I gotta keep it maximized.
Before we get frozen again.
All right, everybody go. Jazz hands. I guess I have to keep it like that. Yeah, Uno, you sound better now. So
Alright, awesome.
that was it for neutrals, really. Just Inquisitor Quan was the only new one specifically. However, Jay did ask that we talk about Adjudicator in the context of his new face aggro combo nightmare. Uno, let's start with you so we can make sure your volume's good.
Yes, I was streaming this deck for a bit yesterday, and I think Adjudicator is pretty good in the deck. It makes you able to like keep killing edges early. Then you don't run Heaven's Eclipse, so it's a little bit worse. But I think generally you want to draw cards early game and then Adjudicator probably the turn before you kill them. I thought about maybe cutting one going out to two, but at the moment, you know, the card is bugged and that lost me quite a few games. It'd been just kind of the games that I would have won. I do think it is decently strong in the deck. And basically, you don't really have to worry about mana once you get an Adjudicator down. And with Mana Vortex, it becomes about assembling the combo pieces, where the struggle really begins in hand size and getting enough card draw. But I do think it's definitely fine in the deck, though I wouldn't be playing it in any other Songhai deck 100% for sure.
RGood?
I agree in the sense that I would never play this card in any other Songhai deck. I tried Jay's combo deck as well, and I think the win rate is surprisingly consistent. But the fact that this card is bugged, it cuts that win rate in half. Like half of the time, you're gonna end up spending more mana than you expect to, and it's when you do that, it's just brutal. I would have won several games that were just lost because of this card not actually performing its effect properly.
Well, until that gets fixed, then Wicked.
Okay, Adjudicator's an interesting one. Obviously, cost reduction is incredibly powerful in all card games. Historically, like it's a very scary thing to introduce in the game, and it really, for what spells they're introduced in the future, it makes you consider what they could potentially do. Like UnoPro said, I think being able to play Killing Edge a lot earlier is really powerful, especially in like a hybrid like that's not fully combo effective when it's got inner focus in it as well. The problem with Adjudicator and a bunch of spells that are kind of like reliant on a certain type in your hand is the 6-card hand size. It's really hard to sculpt your hand effectively, such that you've not got like a mix of minions and spells. And like, if Adjudicator is hitting 2 spells, is it worth like the tempo loss of playing a 3/1 for 3? It's very hard to play with. I think it's very powerful potentially, and will continue to be so in the future. I struggle to justify 3. I'm going to be testing the deck myself though, so I'm kind of ill-informed in that position. But yeah, it's got a lot of potential. I don't know whether it's quite there at the moment still. It's so hard to construct combos with a 6-card mana hand, like with a 6-card hand, and that's if your hand is full, like, and sustain the draw in order so that you don't just burn through your cards once you've reduced them and then not draw into more. So, and if you've got draw in your hand that's Spelljammer, well, you're not reducing that and you're having no impact on that. It's very awkward at the moment.
Just to kind of bring it back to, if you play Adjudicator, even if you only get a single card, hit by Adjudicator in the Mirror Meld combo, that still gets it out on 6 mana as opposed to let's see, we have some technical difficulties. 6 mana as opposed to 7 mana, and getting a 6 mana combo between Tuskboar, Killing Edge, Mirror Meld out. That's 12 damage on 6 mana, which is huge regardless. It's quite often you could see someone down to 12 life by that point in the game.
Oh, I agree entirely. Reducing a combo is incredibly powerful, and that's why cost reduction is always a very scary thing to look at in card games. I just think it's so hard to assemble the hand that combos well with that reduction in this game, even with the replace mechanic. Like, just because of the 6-card hand size, it's so hard to actually get Abjudicator and 3 combo pieces in hand or whatever. Like, obviously only 2 or 1, as you said, it does make a difference, but yeah, I'm not 100% sold yet, and like I said, I look forward to the future of the card. I think it'll probably need to be changed at some point, the more spells they add, but
I definitely think you're going to be surprised with the consistency of this combo. I think the majority of the games I was able to pull or draw into Boar, Killing Edge at least, or Saber Spine, either one, plus Mirror Meld. It's actually very likely to end up running into.
Yeah,
We're
that's
gonna-
what people are telling me. I'm looking forward to test it myself.
We're going to go ahead and take a break for a few minutes while I fix the cams and we get some coffee in us. So yeah, just stay tuned for a minute, and we'll be back shortly.